WMEX Boston.
Chris Shea's Financial Puzzle Plan is a show dedicated to helping you understand your financial path and the puzzle pieces that build it up. Join us each week as Chris explores various topics in various industries with his special guests and your phone calls at 781-834-9639 to join the conversation. Here's your host, Chris Shea of BPS Financial Services.
Thanks, Ben. Pleasure being here on WMEX 1510 AM Boston, 101 FM Quincy, and WMEXBoston.com. This is my first time on this radio station. I've been on other radio stations in the past, and I decided to do this radio show because I did some networking with some people in the senior living space, and they introduced me to the ownership here. And I said, hey, you know, there's a lot of people out there talking about money, and there's a lot of financial advisors out there that talk about returns and those sorts of things. But truth be told, the returns on investment is actually the easiest part about being a financial advisor. The markets kind of do all that for you. So I decided that because of what I do with a portion of my business, where I talk about getting people fit to retire, which looks at retirement differently, I'd hop on the airwaves and help people figure out that financial puzzle, because most of the time people's issue is not with their returns or their investment portfolio. That can be a challenge, that can be a problem, but usually it's their relationship with money and their relationship with the aspects of it that you have to be aware of and nobody wants to really talk about, right? So with WMEX and being a little bit of a, let's just say it's a more mature audience, I wanted to talk about the areas that go around the investments, right? So you've got your real estate. That's a very big topic of conversation. I mean, turn on the news and everything's about real estate and interest rates and the housing market. I also want to talk about estate planning, because as boomers are now getting to their latter portions of their lives, they've got to think about what to do with things for the next generation and how you want to set that up. I also know that mortgages are part of the reality of lives with buying and selling homes and the interest rate, and it's all over the news. Also, reverse mortgages are something that people potentially want to learn about. And then insurance is another thing that people usually financially puzzle-wise make a mistake with. So each week we're going to have a different topic on those 4 big ideas. Every month, the first Tuesday, we're going to be talking a little bit of real estate. But before I introduce our guests, I do want to give you background on me, because I think it's important that you understand where I come from and why this topic is important to me. So I grew up in Hanover. I'm a South Shore native. Went to school at UMass Amherst. My parents, though, were, how do I say this, very big in town. My mother was a realtor. She was a realtor for 35 years until she passed away a couple of years ago. She had her own real estate office in Hanover, and she was very successful from the mid-'80s until literally 2020, when she did her last real estate transaction, I think 4 months before she passed away. My dad was also big in the South Shore area. He was a teacher at Dorchester High. Again, grew up in Hanover. He wanted to be in the town clerk for 9 years, so he won an election 3 times. My parents were very big into all of the stuff in school, right? My parents were on the school committee. They were on the Hanover Youth Athletic Association. I couldn't go anywhere without my parents knowing about it. I can remember one time in high school, I went out and drove around, and as kids back in the 80s, I had a couple kids hanging in my window doing some crazy things. I got home, and before I even got in the door, my dad said, "Oh, so I heard you had so-and-so hanging out your window driving down Broadway." And I'm like, "What?" Like, yeah. So I realized very early on that in order to find myself, I had to leave the South Shore because of the shadow that my parents cast on me. So I went to UMass Amherst, found myself a little bit, and went and got my MBA at Tulane University down in New Orleans. Spent 5 years in New Orleans, and then moved about as far away as possible to Los Angeles, where I worked out there in project management, and then decided. Luckily, fortunately enough, I got married out there. I have a daughter now. She's now 13 years old. Then her mother and I were divorced, so I'm part of that group. Not good or bad, just a statement of fact. And we moved back to Massachusetts about 2016 for a job offer that I had. They gave me 3 choices to leave LA: move to San Francisco, New York, or Boston. And as expensive as you think the Boston housing market is, back then New York was 4 times more expensive, and San Francisco, I wound up buying a house in Duxbury for 1.2 acres of land. You can't find that in San Francisco. So for the same amount of money in New York and San Francisco, we got a great place here in Duxbury, and we moved back to Massachusetts. I became a financial advisor 5 years ago. I've been working in the industry since 2010. So I've got a little bit of a background, and like I said earlier, one of the things that I do is I try and educate people on how to become fit to retire. It's a program I run. We'll hear a little bit more about it as we get to know one another, and hopefully you get to know me and call in and talk and ask questions. Again, that number is 781-834-9639. Ben will be on the phones and get your questions over to us. But in Fit to Retire, I look at things in 5 areas: self-identity, social, health and nutrition, personal relationships, and money. Because if you think about it, for those of you who have not retired yet, if you go to a holiday party, because the holiday season's coming up, or if you just go to a networking event, what's one of the first questions that you ask somebody? The answer is, what do you do for a living? Why? You get an idea of what that person is. And in America, that's a big portion of our self-identity. Well, when you go to retire, for those of you that have retired, you've figured this out, you get asked that question, and the answer can very often be, I used to be X. I used to be an insurance person. I used to be an engineer. I used to be a radio DJ. I used to be a realtor. I used to be a teacher. And when people say I used to be, it becomes something where they feel less important. So I think it's important that we talk about your self-worth, right? Your self-identity, having a self-identity. Social. There's tons of studies out there. I do presentations for the Alzheimer's Association. Again, we'll get into that at another time. But in the presentations I do for the Alzheimer's Association, if people are social, they're half as likely to have cognitive challenges as they go into retirement. Health and nutrition. Obviously, if you keep being active, you're less likely to have aches and pains, right? All the studies show that. And then personal relationships, that covers your relationships with your significant other or your kids or your grandkids. Because another thing that we learned in the pandemic is, even if you're an introvert, you got to interact with your significant others. But you also can't be with each other 24/7. You need that me time and you need that we time. So, and then obviously the money just pays for all that. So that's what I do with Fit to Retire. And like I said, we'll get into that a little bit more. But tonight, after we do our little introductions here, I'm going to introduce Leon Merion here momentarily. He's going to give you his little backstory to let you know who he is. Like I said, the goal of this is to have people call in with their questions around the financial puzzle that is their lives. And one of the biggest ones that I can think of that comes up every single time I have a conversation with somebody about money is real estate. Should I buy? Should I sell? What's the market doing? How is this? Da, 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 da. And again, my mom was a realtor for 35 years. It's second nature to me, but it can be scary to a lot of people. So every first Tuesday of the month, for the next 6 months or so, Leon Merion's going to be showing up, and we're going to be having a conversation that focuses on the financials of the real estate market and what's going on. And again, give you the chance to call in, ask your questions with someone. And the reason why I invited Leon to be my real estate go-to person at this moment in time is because of some of the work we do with seniors and this thing we do called the Empowered Aging Society, where we do presentations to seniors to have them just be better educated because, again, with what I do with the Fit to Retire program, people are, from a young age, you're taught how to do the next thing in life, right? We're teaching kids, again, I've got a 13-year-old daughter. I taught her how to read so she could be at school. When she's in school, she's taught how to get good grades so she can get a job or go to college. When she's in college, she's again taught how to get a job, hopefully, if she goes to college, right? And then once you're in a job, they teach you how to be better at your job. When's the last time anybody taught anybody how to retire? And the answer is it doesn't happen very often, right? Because you're just kind of like, hey, retire, go play golf or hang out with the grandkids or whatever you do for fun, but nobody really talks about it. So that in the retirement space, there's a lot of challenges people have. There's a big alphabet soup of acronyms that you've got to learn as you go into that phase of your life, and the Empowered Aging Society wants to do it. So Leon's one of the people that works with me on that. So I thought this would be a great chance for him to show his expertise in the real estate world and his expertise in the senior world. So I have now talked for about 12 to 13 minutes, and now I'm going to shut the heck up and allow Leon to introduce himself and introduce himself to you and explain why he is very passionate about helping seniors in the real estate market. So, Leon, welcome to my inaugural show here on WMEX, 1510 AM Boston, 101.1 FM out of Quincy, and WMXBoston.com.
Thank you very much, Chris. Appreciate the invitation. And Ben, that was a great intro. My ears perked up when you said it's good to be nice, and we need a lot more kindness and handholding in today's world. But good evening, everyone. My name is Leon Merion. I'm a full-time realtor with Compass, and I am honored to be here as a senior transition specialist.
Compass out of where? Because there's a lot of Compass real estates.
That's true. I am in the South Shore. Our South Shore headquarters is in Hingham, Massachusetts, in the Shipyard, and cover everything from Boston to Plymouth Rock. And Compass is a national brokerage. We're the number one brokerage, and we have partners, great partners with Compass across the country if you need that too. I specialize in helping seniors with the important task of transitioning from quite often their home of decades and discovering what the best living situation is. And I understand that a lot of people have been in their homes for 3, 4, maybe 5 decades, and it's more than just a house. It's where memories were made, good, bad, and ugly. It's where the pictures were taken. It's where a lot of emotions happen. So it's also a home as a friend at that point. And it's hard to, quite frankly, it's overwhelming to know what to do. It's a life-changing step, and it's more, what I do is more than it's just about selling a home. It's about making that transition as smooth and stress-free as possible. And that's why I'm here, to help guide you through the entire process, offering support, assistance every step of the way. It can be a daunting and emotional journey, and if you pay attention to the headlines unfortunately do a lot more to terrify than to clarify. And as Chris was saying, everyone talks about real estate. You know, being a realtor, when I go to a party or anywhere,
you're the man that everyone wants to talk to.
I don't even have to mention that I'm a realtor. Everyone comes up and says, how's the market? What's this? What's that? What's going on? It's become the Super Bowl of, you might not like football, but you want to watch the Super Bowl. So everyone wants to know what's going on. And I always say, look, it depends if you're buying, selling, or investing. And when it comes to the boomers, it's a little more, I don't want to say confused, just different in the sense that, again, are they going to sell that friend? I'm meeting with a lady on Friday, and she says, Leon, I'm so confused. I just don't know what to do. And I said, look, we're going to come in. My first job is to listen, right? I'm not there to sell. I'm there to listen, have a cup of coffee, conversation about your specific needs and desires and concerns you have. And I asked her to bring in her daughter because I also want this to be a family decision. Some people want them involved. She definitely thought that was a great idea. Everything is different. We'll talk a little bit about multi-generational living, which some people say, oh my goodness, that could be amazing. And other people say, hell no, both the parents and the children.
So again, I in everything I do, I try and frame it around my personal experiences with my family. And my, like I said, my mother was a realtor for 35 years. My dad, they moved into their home in Hanover. Well, they first bought their first home in Hanover back in 1969, before I was even born. And they moved in 1989 across town because they couldn't leave town to the home that my mom really wanted after she became a realtor and had done really well in the first couple of years. And all of a sudden she had more money than she knew what to do with and just decided to move, and it's fine. The funny thing, real estate is always entertaining and for me to talk to people about, because when and I'm sure you get this, Leon, people go, oh my God, housing's so expensive. And I always remind people that when my parents bought their home in 1969, my mom and dad were both working as teachers. My dad in the city of Boston, my mom was a teacher in Marshfield. And when they put in for the mortgage, and I do want you to answer this question, Leon.
Oh boy.
How was their income calculated in 1969 for a husband and wife, both working? What was their income that the mortgage companies looked at for that first purchase of a home?
Well, I wasn't selling real estate back then, but I guess it would be that they'd look at the male's income.
Ding, ding, ding. 100% correct.
Okay.
My mom's income as a teacher who was making just as much money as my dad was not looked at as the income that was going to be sustainable, because back in 1969, the assumption was she was going to have kids
Right.
and never work again.
Right.
So all of the bills, including the mortgage and the real estate taxes and everything, had to be paid for by the man's salary. Again, I have a 13-year-old daughter. I'm not saying we need to go back to that. What I'm saying is realize when we talk about the increase in costs of real estate, the assumption now is you've got two earners that are going to pay for things.
Right. And it's interesting when you say that. You brought up rates earlier, too. When I bought my first home, the rate was 8.26%, and we did cartwheels. Yes, prices were lower, and so were wages, and I can't say that things have climbed equally as far as wages and affordability index, but we got spoiled during the pandemic with the low rates. And will they ever get back to that? I'm not a mortgage expert, but I think it's safe to say that rates, already within the last week, rates have come down. And it's going to be all over the news shortly. And headlines, again, aren't always the headlines that we hear about are on a national basis, so we want to break it down and look locally. But as far as the mortgages, there is some light at the end of the tunnel. But one of the biggest problems we see, or I feel, is that it's kind of like the herd mentality. Leon, I'm not going to buy a house now because I'm going to wait until the foreclosures happen. I'm going to wait until the mortgage rates. I'm going to wait. I'm going to stay on the sidelines. Well, first of all, the foreclosure situation has dramatically changed, because back when the 07, 8, 9, the housing true crisis, we're not going to see that again. And here's why. Because people have a lot of equity in their homes, so they have the ability to sell and still be safe. But companies aren't giving out mortgages like chiclets anymore. It's difficult to get a mortgage today.
Yeah.
So that has secured that as well. And so that's a little bit of a safety net we have.
Yeah. No, so, but the point I was going to be making with my parents was the increase in prices versus the way in which your income was looked at, right? So when people talk about the explosion in the cost of real estate, a lot of that has to do with the fact that you're looking now at two earners as opposed to one. And again, my parents bought in 1960, so I don't know what the interest rate was on that. But the house they bought in 1989, I found the mortgage, and the interest rate was like 12%.
Right.
And on the mortgage. And so when people are like, "Oh my gosh, it's a 7% mortgage," that's kind of like the norm for the last 100 years is 7%. So for when I hear people say, "Oh, interest rates are so high," everything in life I look at as being relative, right? And I think that's one of the I think you can correct me because you're the realtor and I'm the financial advisor, but a lot of people are now, there's a phrase about marrying and
Oh, sure.
which I forget exactly. My mom would always tell me that you marry
the house, but you date the rate because
Right.
the rate is changed. For instance, today with ARM, there are a lot of creative ways you can get a house today. But I always tell people today, if you're going to buy a house, it's the best. Houses are overpriced, but if you look back within 2 years from today, you're going to say, my goodness, I think I got a great deal. And experts are saying that the rates are going to land closer to the sixes probably by Q2 of next year. And here's the thing, folks. If you're on the sidelines, everybody's on the sidelines. So if you don't buy today, in 6 months, when and if the rates do come down, the gate's going to open, the herd's going to come out, the lines are going to be same as COVID, prices are going to go up, bidding wars are going to happen. So we have to be a little bit proactive in looking at that.
So that's the buy side. Now, a lot of the people out there might be thinking, well, I've had a house for, like my parents had a house for 30 years from 89 to 2021 when my mom finally, passed away. And she never wanted to sell her house. I'm personally very grateful for the pandemic in the fact that my mom's house, when we sold it, was $150,000 more for no good reason other than the pandemic
Right.
in a year and a half. And literally there was no good reason other than she lived in Hanover and the housing market went bananas. Just stupid,
Bananas.
crazy valuations on the house. But it was what it was. We sold it. We didn't have to worry about buying a place. If someone's thinking about selling and you talk about, this queue that's coming up in a couple months or a year, why should somebody sell now? What's the motivation for someone to say, you know what, I'm going to get out?
Great point. So it sounds like I'm talking out of both sides of my mouth. However, if you're to sell today, first of all, the competition.
Well, I wouldn't say talking out of both sides of your mouth. I would say that you are being realistic to the set of circumstances, right? So I'm again financial advisor. So when I talk to somebody who's 25, 27, 35 and under, I tell them, you want the stock market to go down right now if you're putting your money into your retirement plan on a monthly paycheck by paycheck basis, because you're essentially buying lower, hoping that there's appreciation in the future. I then turn around and tell the people that I work with, and I have clients that are in their 70s, hi, you don't want the stock market to go down because you're going to get in trouble, right? So I don't look at it as talking about both sides. I talk about circumstantial, right?
Sure.
Because you've got to talk to the person or we should be talking to the people that are, based upon their circumstances, what's the best advice for them?
And that's a great point of articulation. I think it's a great time to buy and it's a great time to sell. But as specifically to the boomer gang, they have the equity. They have, everybody wants the most value for their home and the biggest bang for the buck. However, they don't necessarily need it. And what I mean by that is there are three ways to sell today. You can sell the house as is, because if somebody has really enjoyed their home, they might still have. I just sold a home recently that had orange countertops in the kitchen and pink bathrooms. Those are not in today's.
Did it have shag carpet in the bathroom?
It actually had, not in the bathroom, but there was shag carpet in the basement. And so you can sell the house as is, which isn't such a scary term anymore. Because if you sell it as is, that there's less work to do for the entire family if it's a process of the family. You can make some minor improvements, or you could do a completely not necessarily renovation, but get rid of the shag carpets, clean up the floors, paint the house, and stage the house, and you will get closer to top dollar for that. So there are definitely different ways to do it. And another reason to sell today is the inventory is so low, it's supply demand. So the competition is less, and you're going to have more eyeballs on the property.
All right, I want to get back to that, but unfortunately, or fortunately, I don't know, again, on your perspective of this, we've got to take a short little break here. We'll be back in a couple of minutes, but again, this is Chris Shea, BPS Financial Services, solving your financial puzzle on WMEX 1510 AM, 101.1 FM Quincy, and WMEXBoston.com.
I'm your Uncle Tony, and like you, I love the good guys and all the memories from the music and stories on our beloved WMEX. You know, thanks to technology today, you can listen to WMEX everywhere in North America. WMEX is licensed to 1510 AM, which has some drawbacks. When the sun sets, the FCC makes us lower our power. Sometimes bridges or power lines affects the signal. You know, you get that little squiggly noise. I just drove up from the California coast and listened to WMEX all day. Today, all newer cars have Bluetooth, so you can talk through the radio on your phone. I'm sure you've been doing this. This technology brings AM to new heights. First, you download one of these things called an app. You'll have two choices: Odyssey, AUDACY, or TuneIn. When done, click on the search bar and type in WMEX. Soon you will hear WMEX crystal clear and in stereo through your phone on your radio. Power drops at night or you drive outside of range of WMEX, it will come with you everywhere you go. New Hampshire, Maine, New York, even Florida. And remember, crystal clear. These songs, you're going to hear them like you've never heard them before. AM radio reaches heights never dreamed of. If you aren't sure how to do it, ask a young person. They will help. So take it from your Uncle Tony. You're going to love it.
And welcome back. Chris Shea, BPS Financial Services. Oh, yes, I am out of Marshfield, so I am local as well to the South Shore of Boston. 1510 AM out of Boston, and 101.1 FM Quincy, and WMEXBoston.com. For those of you that are streaming this, or the old Alexa, play WMEX radio. Check us out. I'll be here every Tuesday night. I'll have a different guest every week. But I don't think I covered this in the beginning when I did my monologue for 13 minutes. I think it's important, though, that we have a consistent voice in the areas of the real estate, the estate attorneys, the insurance people, and the mortgage folks, simply because money is more than money. And I say that because I usually ask people when I've had a client, I'll ask them at some point in time, and it's not a tongue-in-cheek question. I usually am looking for what their feelings are about money, because I mentioned earlier that money is obviously a very important thing for everyone. But I like to ask people what their definition of money is. And I get all sorts of answers. But I want to give you my definition of money. And I want you to think about it a little bit as we go through. But my definition of money is the way in which, and the material manner by which we achieve and purchase our current and future needs, wants, wishes, and desires. And when I say to that, I get usually a strange reaction until they realize that, yeah, you're right. Like, I do buy my needs, food, shelter, my wants. I want my kid to go to college. I want I want a car. Desires, but needs, wants, wishes, and desires, for the most part, that's all emotional stuff, which is why when people say that they're emotional about their money, I say, no, duh. Everybody is. So if you have this feeling that you're the only one that's emotional about your money, I got news for you. You're not, because money is about achieving things in your life and the medium by which you get there to achieve your needs, wants, wishes, and desires. So if you call in and have an emotional thing that you want to talk about, we understand that it's emotional. And this is going to be something where, frankly, I don't expect anybody to call in tonight. Why? Because you don't know who the hell we are. All right? You've got to get to know us. You've got to get to appreciate that we actually give a rat's petunia about you. My grandmother would laugh at that phrase. But we'll talk more about like our personal stuff than the actual business stuff, unless somebody calls in and has a serious question. But when we broke off, Leon was in the midst of talking about some things, and one of the things that he had talked about earlier that I wanted to at least touch on to have people hear about our thoughts on was a multi-generational aspect of things. I know that I could not live with my parents, or at least I didn't think I could, until the very end. And right before, again, in the pandemic, things were a little crazy. Again, I'm divorced. I was going through the divorce in the pandemic. And my mother, I started to notice she was sliding with her health. And at some point in time, I said, Mom, I want to move in and help you. Because they had a 2,500 square foot house in Hanover. She was up on the second floor. The kitchen was down on the first floor. She never cooked, so we had to bring food in for her. And it was really hard in the pandemic to do all that because you were stuck in your own little world. I actually asked to move in with her, and it turns out it was probably about 3 months too late to do that because she had started to fall off the cliff precipitously. But I didn't think I would ever be able to move in with her. But at the end, I wanted to try and help those circumstances. And I literally was just going to clean out a couple bedrooms and move in, and never wound up happening. I did wind up moving into the house, and we cleaned it up, but we'll get into that another time. But multi-generational living, what's your take on it, Leon? And when you have these conversations with people, how does it, you said it goes one of two ways, either yes or hell no.
So there is a trend for grandparents. A lot of people are selling their second home just to be closer to the grandchildren. But here's a funny statement. Boomers are petrified that their children are raising their grandchildren. Now that's
I can believe that.
That's funny, but it's true. No one's these kids of mine don't know how to raise their kids. Let me. But from a financial perspective, where you could help the most is that, look, for a lot of people, children, it's hard to buy a home that they really want to live in and that they're going to raise their family in. So you can share the resources from a down payment, and it also helps with childcare, pet care, daily chores, cooking together. I mean, my wife's grandmother lived with her. I never knew my wife when her grandmother wasn't living in the home. And it was an incredible experience for her being raised with her grandmother. But for me to enjoy all the stories, be part of that whole generation. And I toured a house today that actually the basement was as big as my house. Now, money can fix a lot of problems with that, but there are ways to retrofy your house. And there are things in different towns which with ADUs, accessory dwelling units, it's you need to look at each. This isn't a quick fix, but you need to really do your due diligence, and we can talk about that if it gets to it. But with ADUs, you can literally have even a separate living quarters, whether it's attached or detached to the house, depending on the town, which makes it a lot more palatable or easier to digest. Because my mom's of the silent generation, she's 82, and she's an active snowbird. She's back and forth to Florida, but she has a down payment at a independent living because she knows that's going to happen at some point. And we do joke about maybe adding on or having her live with us. And she says, again, the hell no. She's single, by the way. If anyone's 70, 75, she's 82, but she needs someone to keep up with her.
Hey,
but
we got a dating show now.
A dating show. She cooks, she cleans, she's gourmet meals, she plays golf, she's a bridge person. But
does she play pickleball?
She doesn't play pickleball, but she's very, very active. And with that said, we've made little adjustments. So something as simple as a grab bar. And she says, I don't need that thing. Well, look, you know what? Just I've
You
seen
don't
her
need it, but you want it.
and I've seen her use it. So
Yes.
it's nice to it's a nice to have. It's not a must have, but it's a nice to have. You want to get there before it's a must
Well,
have.
the thing, and again, I always use my parents as the reference point.
Sure.
The ego played in immensely with my parents. I don't need your help. I don't want your help. My parents practically helped create the building for the Hanover Council on Aging with fundraising and politicking and things like that. And my mom wouldn't use it because she thought that was for old people.
Right.
Yet she was in her 70s. And I'm like, Mom, like that's you when you're in your 50s and early 60s, you built it for people in their 70s. You're now in your 70s. Just because don't think that it's for somebody else if it's for you, right? I mean, I actually play poker on Tuesday nights at a bar here in Marshfield, and
I don't believe it.
They got them all over every pretty much every night of the week. You find a good game around here, but that's beside the point. But the game I play at, there's 2 women in there that are older than 75.
Okay.
The game starts at 8 p.m.
Love it.
They are out all the time. One of them, she is one of the most effervescent people you'll ever meet. She's definitely in her 80s. I don't know her actual age. Her husband passed away years ago, and she has quaint acquaintances for a bunch of different men that fit different portions of her life. But she's figured out how to live her life, and she's sold her house, but she goes to the Council on Aging like every single day because there's resources there. It's a social life. Does she need to, does she need it? Yeah, she does because it's a social life. But just because you think that's for someone else, maybe it's for you, right? Maybe these resources are things that you need help with. That grab bar isn't a bad idea if it keeps you from falling and breaking your hip on one side and your elbow on the other side, which is how my father actually wound up dying. He fell, and he wound up, when you break one side of your leg, a leg on one side and the arm on the other side, you can't do rehab on either. And 99% of those people wind up passing away within 6 months to a year.
Yes.
Just because they can't do rehab. So do the grab bar. That's the whole
grab
thing.
bar, right.
We'll get
but
back
you
to
said
that.
something that's very interesting. So I'm on I'm on the board of my town's Council on Aging, and I see how absolutely amazing the senior centers are. So folks, if you're out there and you're hesitant, give it a try. But that hits on something that, and I know it's not self-serving, but people living in their homes said, I'm not going to that old age home, and they might be very little elderly. People are suffering, a lot of people are suffering from loneliness. And I'm telling you, that's a shame because there's so many amazing resources. Whether you sell your house or not, I don't care about that. There's so many resources within the town, but if you move into a senior living center that's independent or assisted, if you need it, I can almost guarantee your life's going to change for the better because you're going to be involved in a community. You're going to see life. You're going to have 24/7 if you want adventure, action as far as just. I've walked in so many centers where there's someone playing the piano, playing the guitar, singing. The food is incredible. The bus is taking you to
Field trips.
Field trips,
Here,
right?
there, and
All kinds of
everywhere.
activities. It can change your life, folks, and it's worth taking a look at. It's really not you're not giving up. It's not a surrender. It's not a giving it up. This is a great opportunity to, and another very odd statistic is people 65 to 75 are getting divorced.
Yeah.
And then those
No, that's not odd. That's not odd. And we'll talk about that, but finish yours.
but people who are going through that too, they're looking for another bite on the apple. And to get involved with more people, it helps them for all kinds of aspects. So it's really worth taking a peek at that.
Yeah, no, it's so when you talk about people 65 plus getting divorced, I actually looked at when that whole "till death do you part" thing came about in our world. The average life expectancy of those people was like 25 to 30.
Right.
Funny thing about that, huh?
Yeah, I mean, you're getting married at 15, 13 years old.
I'm barely expected to make 40.
That's right.
And you were only expected to live 15 years. So to death do you part was not that long of a time.
Well, to piggyback on that, the researchers who were trying to figure out why are people getting divorced at this age when they made it through so many interesting good, bad, and ugly times is because they said, hey, look, I didn't think I'd be living this long, this well, and have some money in the pot. So, folks, we're not advocating that, but it is a statistic.
Yeah.
It's called reality, my friends.
Right.
It's reality sometimes.
Yeah, and it's also funny too. Like I have a friend, a person I know. They picked up and moved to Florida, and he, because it was a he, was like 80 years old, 75 something years old when he did this. He moved into the facility. It was more of a community than a facility, right? Because a lot of these places you'll find, if you go check them out, they're like country clubs, a lot of them.
Yes.
And
I want to move into one
yeah,
of them. I'm not kidding.
So this
Seriously,
guy,
me too.
this guy moved down to Florida, and he was single, and he couldn't believe the first week he had 10 different women come to him with casseroles. It was a casserole commandos. Were showing up to feed
love it.
to
I love
feed
it.
to feed this man,
Wow.
and he was like, "Oh my God, I should have moved down here like 10 years ago because I got more, dating interactions than before because, again, like you said, like people get lonely,
Right.
and the American idea of having your own home and the white picket fence is fantastic when the house has a lot of people in it. When there's no one in there, that my mom lived by herself for the last 4 years of her life in a 2,500 square foot house.
Mm-hmm.
But she wasn't alone. The echoes of my dad, because they'd been married 49 years and 50 weeks before my dad passed away, literally 2 weeks shy of their 50th wedding anniversary. And she was living with the ghosts of him. And I had a hard time getting her to get rid of things because a lot of her, you talked about this earlier, Leon, the memories were attached to the physical things. My dad was 6'1", 300 pounds. He was Santa Claus 365 days a year with a big white beard. Like he did Santa Claus for the Cardinal Cushing. There's pictures of him in the Patriot Ledger hanging out of a helicopter for Christmas with the Massachusetts State Police.
Wow.
Like I got it at my house. It's
That's a great picture.
yeah, it's phenomenal. And I got a videotape of him in a helicopter videoing the house as he was flying over it with the Massachusetts State Police. But his presence was there. Now, me, I'm 5'9". This morning I got on the scale at 190 pounds. I was not fitting into clothes for a 6'1", 300-pound person, yet every single time I went to my mom's house, she'd be like, your dad's clothes are over there. Do you want to wear any of them? I'd be like, do I want to or can I? Right? I kept some of his ties, right? Because I want to have some of things of him.
Sure.
And truthfully, I kept a lot of the Santa Claus ties but we did give a lot of that stuff away. The memories that my mom had, she felt were tied to the things, but the reality was they weren't tied to the things. We had videos, we had pictures. She could have taken those anywhere, and probably extended her life by a couple of years by being more social.
Right. And the first step, you brought up a great point as far as what I hear and see, the memories I have here. I don't want to leave these. Well, you can still pick and choose some of the great things and then give some of the quote-unquote memories to your children, your friends. It can be a holiday throughout the year when you can do gifting because listen, I've been in my house since 2004. We have a big 2-car garage, and we don't park our cars in the garage.
I was going to say, you don't have room.
We're not
for the
hoarders,
crap.
but we have too much stuff. We made a goal this year by New Year's to get rid of that and park the cars. But the point is, someone who's been living in their home for 30, 40 years, it's an overwhelming task. So take the time to just start slow, even if it's a 3-year plan, a 5-year plan. But don't be afraid. Listen, the boomer generation they got stuff done, right? They were people that made it happen. I can do this myself. I don't need anybody else. There's nothing wrong with not even getting help, but just moving back into another location where there's more of a community. So it's definitely worth taking a peek.
Yeah, and then you talk about stuff. After my mom passed away, I got to clean out the house. We did 6 30-yard dumpsters of stuff that we threw away.
That's a lot of stuff.
That's a lot of
That's
stuff.
a lot of stuff. Well, granted, one of them was all wood from a. She had a 3-season room on a deck that a tree fell on after she passed away, and again, the pandemic getting that fixed was a nightmare. But like one of the dumpsters was that. So okay, maybe 5 30-yard dumpsters of stuff. I went up to the attic and I started looking around, figuring out what I might want to keep, what I might not want to keep. And guess what I found up there?
Santa
Stuff.
suit.
Actually, I didn't find the Santa suit. I wanted the Santa suit. I didn't find it. No, I found that 90% of the stuff had rat poop on it,
Yeah. Okay.
which meant all of that was trash. If it wasn't in a box, at some point in time, some critter had climbed on it and done bad things to it, and all that stuff just can't be cleaned. Like there's it was just ratty tatty, kept there because it was thrown up in the attic over the last 30 years, and nobody looked at it, and so 98% of that stuff got thrown away.
That's unfortunate.
But I mean, that's the way. That's just the reality of things.
Right.
Things that were chic and great in 1990 aren't anymore. Right. My dad was a teacher in the city of Boston. He taught computers. I had a computer at our house in 1982. It had a what's the big 70 the big record 33s.
Oh yes.
What's the big record? Not 33s.
I think 45 and 30.
45 is the small one.
45s, yep.
The big one, the 33s. We had one of those that doubled our memory from 2 RAM to 4 RAM.
Whoa, take it easy there.
Right, and we played. My dad had got a video game, and I use video game with air quotes right now.
Atari.
No, before Atari. It was a computer video game.
We're talking like Oregon Trail.
Yes, we're talking that, but we're talking a football game. I played the first ever computer football game, and the game had 5 or 6, maybe 10 offensive plays and 10 defensive plays. The offensive person would type their play in while the defensive person turned away. The defensive person would then type their play in while the offensive person, they could watch or whatever because it was too late by that point in time. And the computer would run a simulation and be like, ran off tackle, gain of 3 yards, 2nd and 7. That was the video game that we played, the computer game that was so cool because the computer did it as opposed to us running outside and playing tackle football and on the street. Because, well, that's what our parents let us do. And then, like, you got your family that are questioning whether or not we can be parents to our kids. They let me play tackle football on the street. Like, really?
Right,
like,
right.
Could have died, like.
But folks, just getting back to that. So, after you have your morning coffee and read the paper, maybe you take an hour a day or a couple hours a week and just box some things up. And I know a lot of people like to help others. And there are lots and lots of charitable organizations out there that are more than willing to take things that, remember, your junk is another person's treasure. There's a lot of opportunity to help others, and by helping yourself, downsizing or right-sizing your home.
I gave away, so I said, the 5 30-yard dumpsters. I still gave away probably 40 tote boxes of stuff to the Salvation Army or Savers.
Yeah.
Of
And
glasses.
Did you feel good?
Yes, it felt great
Right.
for a couple reasons. One, I was giving it to somebody because somebody else could use it. But two, it was clearing out space.
Right.
And all of a sudden, this house that was cramped and overstuffed with stuff, we found literally 3 China sets in my mom's house. 3 different China sets.
That's impressive.
I wound up selling them online on Facebook.com because I was like, okay, they're China sets. I can't just give those away.
Sure.
They're actually worth a little bit. But like, you can only have so many cups. You can only have so. But because after 30 years, there were like 10 different sets of glassware that were just stored. I remember going through and finding trash bags, like, the 30 trash bag thing, the white trash
Yes,
bags.
sure.
Like 5 or 6 of those stashed in different parts of the kitchen because my parents would forget that they bought that. They forget where they had stashed it because there was so much stuff. They'd go buy a new one. Finally, when I got through it, I was like, I got trash bags for a year.
When my wife's parents passed, all her siblings took, what was special to them, and we all agreed on that. But we took a few boxes home and things that other people didn't want, including pictures. And after time, we're like, oh my goodness, now our kids are going to have to go through that. So it's statistically, if you have a less cluttered house, you're in a better position mentally. I can't back that up, but there's a lot of proof behind that statement, and it's just helps not to clutter so much.
Yeah, my daughter, again, 13 years old. She helped me clean out the house, and she is actually very thankful for the process because she realizes now that I'm a minimalist now, and
Now she knows why.
Like I go into my closet, and if I buy a shirt, I've got to throw a shirt away. Like,
Love it.
I can't. For me, I know that if I have too much stuff, the stuff weighs on me. That might be a process of my past, which we'll get into at some other late important time. But yeah, so it's 6:54 here at WMEX 1510 AM Boston, 101 FM Quincy, and WMXBoston.com. Getting towards the end of our show here. Very grateful for everyone listening in and hopefully getting a little bit of a awareness of who we are. But before we take off, anything you want to share with anyone, Leon, about anything either personal or real estate related before we get you out of here for a month? Oh my God, a month before we get to talk to you again.
Imagine after Thanksgiving.
Hopefully you don't eat too much turkey and gain 20 pounds.
I hope so too. I need to go the other way on that. However, so I guess what I'd like to share is that we're going to be doing this monthly, and we hope this has been a little bit beneficial, and that you'll see if there are things that come up, write them down, get ready to call in, and we'd love to have a dialogue with folks, and hopefully that will spark other questions and thoughts and ideas for other people who are listening. So it's a bit of a marathon, not a sprint. You want to think. Here's the thing: you want to think about whether it's moving out, downsizing, what have you, before you have to do it. If there's a health problem, if there's a family situation, it's best to just like finances, right? You people, what do they say? I'd take better care of myself if I was going to live this long. The same with making a plan. I always tell people, look, whether you want to sell your house tomorrow or 10 years from now, let's get together, share a coffee, and make a plan so that we can figure it out. I want to be the long-term real estate resource. And part of this show and program, which we're really excited to do, is to be here to help you. So don't be afraid to ask any questions. And if you stump us, I promise we'll get back to you with the right answer.
And Leon, I just wanted to ask real quick, how can folks reach out to you if they have questions specifically for you? Chris, I'll ask you the same question after Leon answers his.
Sure. Well, if you would like to use email, the best way is leon@listingwithleon.com, all one word. So leon@listingwithleon.com. Or my cell phone is 781-258-7418. That's 781-258-7418. Thank you.
Cool. You talk about planning. And before I get my info to everybody, you also talked about the multi-generational thing earlier.
Yes.
I want to give something to parents and grandparents out there that if your kid's one of those boomerang kids that's moved back in a home and you're figuring all that stuff out and you want to get them financially sound, charge them $500 a month in, again, air quotes, rent, but make them put into an IRA or some other investment vehicle. I just want to share with you, if you did $500 a month for 40 years, which is 480 months, with a return of 7%, which over 40 years is completely reasonable and doable, you would have deposited $240,000. Now, what would that value, though, that money be, given the 40 years, the 7% return? Well, I'll cut to the chase, and the value would be about $1.2 million. So if you want to make your kids and grandkids millionaires when they move back in, instead of charging them rent, have them put that money into a retirement account. And you can turn $500 a month, which if you break it down, that's $125 a week, which is essentially going to Starbucks every single day. Buy a damn Keurig and get the K-Cups, all right? And that can turn into $1.2 million. That's a great gift for your grandkids and your kids. But Chris Shea, to get in touch with me, it's Shea C, that's SHEAC at CeteraNetworks.com. That's CETERA networks.com. Yeah, it's a mouthful. My phone number is 781-733-5996. Or you can do one better and call the radio station, and Ben's got my contact information. And you can have a conversation with him and find out if we are actually decent human beings or if we're just put on a front.
Can confirm they are good guys and good guy approved. And don't forget, guys, they can always find your information at WMEXBoston.com under the show tabs. So that'll be great. Gentlemen, great first show. It's been wonderful having the airtime with you tonight.
Thank you, Ben.
Hope you guys have a wonderful rest of your week.
Have a great night, everyone.
Thank you.
Here on 1510 WMEX.